know if everybody can see this, and I've done it.
Strangely, the handle on the other side of the door is being turned as though someone inside were doing this. But, as shown in the video, no one is in there. An encounter like this would definitely spook anyone. But then again, there are some who might write this off as being caused by a draft entering the handle's lock. Although it isn't sure if that's the case, it's the second video that seemingly dispels this notion. On July 11 of 2009, Jerry's recording his son when all of a sudden, something really creepy happens. Take a look.
Whoa!
The same closet from the first video can be seen opening on its own. Then, seconds later, a toy flips over by itself. It almost seems like whatever had been inside had tripped over this toy in its attempt to get to the child. It is immediately then that he grabs his son and rushes out of the living room at once. Understandably, Jerry was totally spooked. Viewers believe that he might be dealing with something paranormal. But, as with most videos, it's hard to be sure if that's so. Could it be that a supernatural presence resides in Jerry's closet? Or is something else going on here? You be the judge.
You want to hear a scary animal story?
Yes.
Yeah. In 2006 in Sierra Leone, Africa, there was a chimp sanctuary, and it was 3 Americans, 2 Africans. Little did they know, the 31 chimps that were in this sanctuary had escaped because they're very abusive to these chimps. So these abused chimps escaped, 31 of them. And when they're going down, all of a sudden this ginormous chimp named Bruno, which was the alpha male, came into the middle of the road. He's 6 feet tall and weighs 270 pounds, which is double the amount of a normal chimpanzee.
That's Brock Lesnar.
Huge. They stopped, and then the chimp Bruno starts running towards this car, jumps and like is banging on the car, rips the side mirror off, punches in the back window, grabs one of the African man's hands. Gates to the sanctuary were closed, and so the driver, who was African, tried to ram the gate to get through. Nothing happened except it disabled the car. There was one American in there whose name was Gary. He was knocked unconscious when they hit. The African driver got out, took off into the woods, and then the 2 other Americans got out too. Bruno gets Melvin, bites his foot off, and then Gary grabs a big stick and starts like jabs him in the throat, and then Bruno stumbles back and then takes off into the woods. This guy was dating this girl, 1893 in Texas. He ended up breaking up with her, and she couldn't handle it. She was so upset by it that she ended up,
You know.
Oh no.
The brother of the girl went to this man's house
To seek revenge.
To seek revenge, shot at him. It grazed his face, and lodged into a tree behind him. And he's like, I'm the luckiest man ever. But that brother ended up immediately on himself. 40 years went by. He got married, had kids. Mm-hmm. And then him and his son were like, we're going to go take down that tree. And it was a big old tree.
No.
And they started chopping it down. It was like such a big tree and like really dense.
No.
He said, go get the dynamite.
Don't.
And listen, the son put the dynamite in. The dad's just standing there. It was like 100 yards away or something. The son lights the dynamite, runs away. Boom. Right? That bullet that was lodged in that tree, right in the middle of the forehead.
Are you kidding me?
Killed him.
Dead.
That's a real story?
Real story.
That is the craziest
Is that
story.
not crazy?
That is nuts.
The devil defended my grandmother from her abuser. Before I begin, even if you believe these stories or don't believe these stories, because obviously I cannot confirm these are true because I wasn't there, I do want to give you a trigger warning. This does talk about domestic violence. So if you're sensitive to topics like this, please just scroll away. So this story was told to a girl by her grandmother. This happened to her grandmother when she was very young. At the time, she was pregnant and had already had 2 kids with a guy she had married. This guy was horrible. He was a drunk and he would beat her and even sometimes grape her. Obviously, she says that her grandmother now knows that she should have left him a very long time ago, but it was around those times where you get sent off to get married and basically you're supposed to stand by your man no matter what. And even if she tried to leave him, she at the time was fearful that the people in the town would just look down on her and take his side, so she was very afraid. So there was a night where her husband husband got to the house and again was drunk just like any other fucking day. They lived in a ranch a little far away from town, and before this man even stepped foot into the house, he was already screaming and insulting the lady. When he finally steps foot into the house, he punches the grandmother and accuses her of having an affair with somebody else and tells her that when he's gone, she probably hides them in the ranch somewhere. The grandmother claims that she never had an affair with anybody, but to her, he would just find any excuse to basically beat her up and treat her bad. But on that occasion, the grandmother did defend herself and tell him that he's crazy, that she's not having an affair, and that she's not hiding anybody in the ranch. However, that was when he started beating her up again and telling her that she was a liar, because when he started walking up to the house, he saw a man hiding like around the ranch. And as a matter of fact, he had seen the man, grabbed a machete, went towards where he saw him, but when he got there was nobody, and that's when he went back to the house and started screaming and insulting her and eventually beating her up. He continued to beat on her, and that's when the grandmother heard one of the doors of the house open up and footsteps coming near to where they were. That is when she looked up and being on the ground and sees a very, very dark shadow with really bright red eyes. She doesn't know how to explain it, but when she looked at this thing's eyes, she could tell that there's so much anger in them. When the shadow finally got really close to where they were, she said that she saw when the shadow grabs her husband and drags him out of the house. She stayed in shock, but says that she could still hear her husband screaming almost towards like the crops, like he was being dragged through the crops. In that moment, she got up, she went out of the house, and I mean, she was still like, what the fuck is going on? Because this shadow has taken her husband. She said from afar, she can still see where that shadow and her husband were moving, and they were moving away from the farm, and she doesn't understand why she didn't just turn around and go into the house, but she decided to follow. She decided that she was gonna go and save her husband. Couldn't be me, but let's keep going with the story. So she decided to follow, and as she followed, she noticed that they stopped when the land met the river. And as she got closer, she could see that this shadow with the red eyes was drowning her man in the river. I know they say don't ever wish anything bad on people, but she was terrified that her husband was gonna die, and she got close to where they were, and that is when the figure saw her and actually backed away from the man. She actually pulled her husband out of the water and says that he looked terrified. I still don't feel bad. She said that she didn't know how she did it, but she managed to get him up and try to walk him back towards the house. As they're walking towards the house, her husband finally like comes to, and he doesn't know what's going on. He's pissed off and starts screaming and insulting the grandmother again. You want to know what's going on, bitch? She just saved your fucking life. But that's when the grandmother says that the shadow with those red eyes appeared again. She says that this figure grabs her husband again, but this time drags him like far away towards the crops. However, this time, since the grandmother was so scared because she still didn't understand what she was seeing or what this thing was, she decided to go back to the house. And she says that even when she went into the house, she can hear her husband screaming. But even with those screams, she decided that she was not gonna come out of the house again, because this time she was like, what am I doing? I'm pregnant. I am not gonna go out there and save him from whatever that thing was. By this point, several days have passed and her husband had not come back home. She was starting to think the worst, but about 3 days later, he came back home. She explains that when she saw him, she almost did not recognize him. He had scratch marks from head to toe. His entire body was full of injuries. He was dirty and his clothes had just been torn. She says that the strangest thing about it was that her husband couldn't remember anything. He had no idea what happened to him. He didn't even remember where he had been the entire 3 days. Thankfully, the grandmother just opened her eyes and decided that she was gonna leave his ass. When she decided to leave, she says that she never heard about him again. And with time, the grandmother met the girl who's telling us the story's grandfather. Thankfully, he was the complete opposite of what her ex-husband was. The grandmother says that she will never understand why that dark figure helped her that time. But because of what this thing looked like and his red eyes and the way she felt when she looked into his thing's eyes, she believes that it was the devil. Can you imagine how bad of a person you have to be that the devil defended somebody from you? Anyway, if you're watching this and you're a piece of shit that does this type of things, yeah, be careful, because the devil might come and get you. That was crazy, right? I shouldn't say this, but like, be scared, bitch! Okay, I need to chill, but what do you guys think?
Have you ever heard of the story, the Epic of Gilgamesh?
Yeah.
The story was written 2000 BC. The story talks about how he was 2/3 God and 1/3 man. And the claim was that he was 17 feet tall.
Oh man.
And he was this brutal king, like just tyrant. The story goes that he was buried under the Euphrates River.
That's drying up.
Well, here's the thing. In 2003, a archaeologist by the name of Jörg Fassbinder, he was in the Mesopotamia area and doing like the whole LiDAR thing. And what he said is, I have found the tomb of Gilgamesh.
Oh my gosh.
But it's underground, right? So they have to like dig it up. Guess what happened 1 month later?
Earthquake.
The U.S. invades Iraq.
Oh my gosh!
No way. Oh, man.
This is where it gets crazy.
Yeah.
All the archaeological sites were then stopped in Iraq, so stop digging, you're out of here. But the locals around this encampment, the U.S. encampment, reported that the U.S. military were digging at night, taking things out of the ground and putting them onto trucks and driving them off.
We're villains.
I hate you. I've always hated you. I'm going to kill you, and I'm going to make it hurt. Oh, how I miss the way you used to cry when I screamed.
The scary thing about skinwalkers is that they could be your family, your friends, anyone around you. Now, this is a story I heard from a guy named Jesse. Jesse had just moved to Nashville, Tennessee, and he was pursuing this musical career. He said he got an apartment in downtown, and things were actually going pretty well for him. And he actually got a gig as a guitar player in a pretty large band in the area. So he said, you know, he had just started dating this new girlfriend, and he was enjoying living in the big city when all of a sudden he gets a phone call from his father. Now, his father, he hadn't heard from in like 10 years. He had like went off on a bender, and he had no idea where he went. So it was, you know, kind of weird to hear from his father. His father tells him, you know, I'm gonna come to Tennessee and stay with you for a little bit if that's all right. Like, I need to get back on my feet. Is that okay? He was reluctant, but was like, okay, yeah, let's get you better and let's bring you here to Tennessee. So his father comes out and moves in with him. After about a week of living in this apartment, he decides to introduce his girlfriend to his father. The girlfriend, she comes over one night, and when she comes through the front door, she sees his father. Now, he said his father, you know, used to wear all of this Native American jewelry and like a talisman that he believed protected him from anything negative. Well, he said it immediately as his girlfriend walked in the door, she got really fidgety and nervous, and she acted like she didn't want to be there or talk to his father. And after about 10 or 15 minutes, she's like, you know, I have to leave, I have to go. And she just walks out the door. So Jesse's kind of like, well, what's going on with her? Like, you know, what's up? And he said, you know, for the next couple weeks, right, she didn't want to come over to the house. She didn't want to see his father. She was acting really strange. So he said, you know, a few more months pass and things were going really good with his father. But then he started noticing that his father would go out late at night. He would be gone for the rest of the night. And in the morning, he would find his father in the living room, completely naked. And he started to suspect that maybe his father was back on something. So, he's stressed out about this, and he's stressed out about his girlfriend acting strange. And he said, it was just really, really hard times. Well, he said one night he gets done with the gig and he actually was walking home. Now, at the time, Nashville had a pretty significant snowstorm and there was no one out in the downtown area. And he said he just remembered walking down the streets and it was eerily quiet. There was no one out. And he said that's when he seen in the alleyway next to a restaurant, there was a man standing there. And he said just something seemed off about this person and he felt like something was about to go down. So he started to run. And he said as he took off running, this man started to chase him. And he said all of a sudden this man went from being a man to some sort of half man, half dog-like creature. And he said it was just some ferocious type of creature. And this thing is running after him down the streets of Nashville. And he said he trips in the snow, he falls to the ground, and this thing comes over on top of him and starts smelling him. And he said all of a sudden it turned its head. And he said as he had him, kind of pinned down on the ground, he looked over and he noticed, there was a tattoo on this thing. And it was the exact same tattoo that his dad had on his wrist. And he said this thing just turned and it got up and it took off running down into an alley. And he said at this point he suspected that whatever this thing was most likely was his father, and he was now terrified. So he goes back to his apartment. He calls up his girlfriend and he's like, hey, I'm freaking out. This is what just happened with my father. I know you don't believe me, but something is wrong. His girlfriend comes over and she starts talking to him. And she's like, the reason I've been acting weird is because before you introduced me to your father, I was walking down the street and I seen your father eat a dog. And I didn't know how to tell you that. And I didn't know what you would think or if you would believe me. And so I knew something was off about him. And once he heard this, he was for certain that his dad was whatever this creature was. So him and his girlfriend, they locked themselves in the bedroom. And about 1 a.m., he said all of a sudden he hears the front door open of his apartment. And he can hear footsteps coming down the hallway. And then bam, 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 bam. He hears this banging sound on the door. And he hears his father screaming, yelling at him to come out, to get out of the bedroom right now. And he's like, no, I'm not coming out. And he's like, you don't understand. She's a skinwalker. You need to get out of there now. And he said that's when he turned and he looked behind him and he seen his girlfriend was no longer his girlfriend, but this same creature that he had seen on the streets. And so he ran out the door and he said his father did some kind of ceremony, and whatever this was took off out of the apartment and he never seen it again.
Flash is on. Alright, let's take a look. I guess not.
Let me see. I'll know if she's my dog. Merlin, sit. Turn around. Turn around. Lay down. You're not my dog. My dog don't know how to do no fucking trick. The fuck? Call 911. Hey! Somebody!
What? What are you doing? Did you not hear that? No. Are you sure? Did you hear that? CG.
Hey, can you help me? Yeah, sure. Girl, that is not me. Do not go in there. What?
I'm not crying.
ボタンでしょ。180億だって配ってんだよ、しかも男の人に。わかる。
リンカリンカリンカリンカ
戻ったどうしたどうしたどうしたどうしたびっくりしてみた。
First.
Oh, no, go first. I'm about to take a picture of it. You gotta get lower than that. Look at him move.
Oh my god.
Uh-oh, it's about to catch something. Y'all ready to go back?
Yes.
You're your baby calling now. Let me jump. Oh, heck no. Look at the moon. Look at the moon.
Dude. What the fuck? Oh my god, no. Fuck that.
I know it's right. He's right there.
Where'd he go? I saw you in there.
if you remember the urban legend of Momo, right? It was this terrifying looking pale creature with these big bulbous eyes and this, creepy smile, the body of a human, but the legs of some kind of bird. And the legend goes that this thing messages people and tells them to do bad things. And they actually did a whole write-up on the news and everything about this and warned people that there was this legend going around. Now, although it was made up on the internet, it actually had some basis in reality. There was a story out of Illinois State University. There were 2 students who were living in a dorm at the time. Now, this one student went on to say that him and his roommate would sleep every night with the window open because they would sleep hot. And he said this one particular night, he was asleep. His roommate was asleep across the room. And he said he just remembered having this very vivid dream of this pale white creature with long hair and big bulbous eyes and the legs of a bird just staring at him. And he said they were staring face to face. And the next thing he knows, he said he woke up, and that's when he realized it was just a dream. Except he noticed the blankets he had over him were now on the floor, and the bathroom light was on. So he said, well, is my roommate in the bathroom? But he looks over and he sees his roommate is in his bed. So he said that's when he started to hear like this whispering sound, and it was coming from the bathroom. So he gets up, he goes over to the bathroom, and when he slowly looks through the doorway, there's nothing there. So he's like, that's weird. He turns off the lights. He goes back to his bed and he lays down. Well, he's kind of freaked out by this, and he said he got this feeling like he was, being watched. So he decided to pull the blankets over his head. He said after laying there for, 15, 20 minutes, he just felt like something or someone was in the room. So he slowly pulled the covers down, and as he looked over in the direction of his roommate sleeping, he sees this tall white creature standing over his roommate. And he said, he couldn't help but let out this sigh. This creature turns his head really fast, looks at him, jumps off the bed, and walks over to him very awkwardly. And he said this thing got right within his face, and he could feel the breath of this thing on his neck. And then he hears his roommate make some kind of sound, and he said this thing just turned and went out the window. And he said his roommate, was woken up and it was like, hey, what's going on? Like, everything all right? And he said to his roommate, like, hey, can we close the window, man? Like, would it be all right if we close the window? So he closes the window, and they both go, like, back to sleep. The next morning, he tells his roommate what happened, and his roommate's, like, shocked because he's like, I had the exact same dream last night. And from that night on, they decided to sleep with their window closed.
Maybe don't listen to this story at nighttime, especially if you share your bed. So Javier is a single dad and has a son named Martin. Javier has been really into work lately and working really hard that whenever he comes home, he's just ready to go to bed. They live in a really small house that only has 1 bedroom. He somehow put in a small couch in there and made room for a little table, but this is all they could afford. He does share that bedroom with his son, and they also share the bed. They're so used to sleeping together at this point, they each have their own blankets, their own pillows, and they each have their own side, so they very much respect each other's spaces. He explains that his son understands that his dad can't afford anything more than that, so he definitely understands the situation and he's okay with it. And they also only share 1 little dresser that is in that bedroom. So there was one night where he was extremely tired. He got home from work, didn't even say hi or like good night to his son, went to bed, and he passed out. So it was close to midnight when he got woken up because he started to hear almost like like scratching in the bedroom. So the bed in the room is cornered and Dad is the one that sleeps close to the wall in the bed. He explains that he remembered in that moment that he had a flashlight in that crack of the bed and the wall, and that was because a lot of the times in that neighborhood sometimes the lights would go out, so that was like the emergency flashlight because it would be a mess when he would get up to go to work and couldn't see anything. So again, he has that flashlight only for emergencies, but he's realizing that he might have not changed the batteries and the flashlight may not even work. So not knowing if the flashlight would turn on or not, he found it in the crack of the bed and the wall. He tried to turn it on, it wouldn't turn on, so he like kind of hit it twice and it did turn on, but it was very dim. So once he gets that flashlight to turn on, he starts hearing those scratches a little louder and a little more frequently. As he's pointing the flashlight around the room, he's thinking to himself, I really hope this isn't a rat or an animal that's come in here. He points the flashlight towards the door to see if the door is open or not, and it's closed. He points the flashlight to the ground and there's nothing there. And that was when he decided to turn left and he pointed the flashlight towards that little dresser that was in the room. That is where he sees Martin sitting on top of the dresser. And with a little bit of light from that flashlight, he can see that Martin's legs are like swinging, but that his hands are to the side, scratching on that dresser. He thought to himself that is really weird that Martin is doing that, but he decides to ask, Martin, are you okay? The boy immediately stops, freezes, and the dad says that he starts to see the little boy just turn like this very slowly towards where he was, asking him if he's okay. For some reason, the dad seeing his son turn very slowly towards him like that, he became immediately terrified. He's like, I had never seen Martin do this. I've never seen him act this way, never in my life. Like, why would he turn so slowly facing me? The dad again, Martin, are you okay? And the kid just continued to turn around very slowly. It was only until Martin completely faced his dad where the dad says that he can see his entire eyeball was black. Again, the dad's like, Martin, are you okay? Like, what's going on? And the dad says that he notices when Martin gets into like a little squat position and leaps to his dad. Like, he just jumped onto him like he was gonna attack him. The dad obviously screams when that happens because he's getting ready for that attack, for that impact. When he screams, he hears Martin's voice say, Dad, what are you doing? What's going on? You just woke me up. His voice was coming from next to his dad on the bed because Martin had been asleep next to him the entire time. Obviously, the dad puts the flashlight to where his son usually sleeps and he's there, literally rubbing his eyes because he had just woken up. He's terrified and he starts pointing that flashlight all around the room and sees nothing. To this day, he has no idea what he saw in that bedroom that night, and sometimes he tries to lie to himself and say maybe it was a hallucination, maybe I was just really tired and I saw that. But then he says that he started to hear stories about doppelgangers and things that is what he saw that night. But what do you guys think?
Grandpa, can you hear me? Yeah. Oh my God.
Oh my fucking God, I swear to God, this thing just fucking looked at me. Oh my fucking...
Dogs are ready for bed. It's just a peaceful night here. Get ready to go to bed myself. What the fuck is that? What? Oh God! Fuck!
Ma'am, do you need help? Do you need an umbrella? Are you okay? Your makeup's running. She's makeup.
Cheeseburger. Literal fucking demon.
chickens kept getting stolen allegedly by some creature, but no one believed him, so he decided to set up a trap to record proof, and it didn't end well. He hid in the hen house and waited all night for the intruder, but nothing happened except some noises, which was not enough evidence to prove his point. And surprisingly, the next morning, the hen house was open again with few chickens missing, and tracks of the creature were not covered with snow, so he could follow them with his son on snowmobiles. And after about 10 minutes of driving, the tracks disappeared near the tree, so they stopped and looked around when they heard this.
We managed to track it to this tree. I don't know where it went from here, but honestly, it looks like it went up. You hear that? Jesus Christ.
Then while coming back home, they actually caught the creature on camera for the first time and confronted it. Watch what happened.
So this freaking thing, it's staring at me. All right, whatever you are, you need to leave. Stay out of this place. It's our home. They followed me home from the gifting rock. It's about 1 o'clock in the morning right now. I think I don't know what to do. But they followed me home, and it is absolutely staring at me right now.
You might just be haunted.
He's not catching ball with you?
Yeah.
You need someone to play ball?
Baba.
I don't see anything.
It's Adeline.
Adeline?
Yeah.
She's down there?
Yeah.
Okay. She can stay down there.
I understand. I'm gonna need you to step out so we can check the residence.
Oh boy. What do we got going on here?
Follow for more.
This is a video that a woman filmed before she actually went missing. It's like her last ever recording because her and her husband had a rocky relationship and she had a feeling that something bad was gonna happen.
This is me, July 29th, 2008, covering all my bases, making sure that if something happens to me or my family or all of us that our assets are documented. Hope everything works out and we're all happy and live happily ever after as much as that's possible.
After the video was recorded, nothing really happened, but a year and a half later is when she went missing. She didn't show up for work, and the kids, they didn't show up to daycare. The father didn't show up to work either, so everybody was reported missing. A couple hours later, the dad and the two boys arrived back to the house. He was just saying like, nah, I don't know where she went, and then they end up interviewing the little boy. He basically ends up saying how mommy was with us, but she didn't come back with us. He didn't know why she didn't come back with us. Nah. Weeks after she disappeared, he ends up telling one of the carers mommy's dead, and then a couple months after that, her younger son, the 2-year-old, ends up drawing a picture of a car and 3 people and says that mommy's in the trunk. 2 years later, CPS, they bring the kids to the husband. They run inside, but then he closes the door on the CPS worker.
And something really weird has happened. The kids went into the house and the biological parent, whose name is Josh Powell, will not let me in the door. And I could hear one of the kids crying.
Okay, so you don't live there, right?
No, I'm contracted to the state to provide supervised visitation.
And who is there to exercise their visitation?
I am. And the visit is with Josh Powell.
And who's
supervised? And he is the husband that I supervise.
So you supervise and you're doing the visit?
I'm the supervisor here.
Wait a minute. If it's a supervised visit, you can't supervise yourself.
Out of nowhere, she ends up smelling gasoline coming from the house, and then
a lot of people don't realize how many people disappear at national parks in the United States every year. Now, a lot of these, right, are very strange cases, and these are people who have vanished without a trace. Just in the last year alone, there have been over 2,200 disappearances that occurred in national parks across the U.S. And some of them are just very odd, strange disappearances. So it's always brought up the question, are these parks created to bring people to nature, or are these parks created to keep something in? Now, this is a story I heard out of one of the national parks, and to protect this storyteller's identity, I am going to change some of the details. Now, this person, who we'll call John, he said that him and his friends, they would go to this national park all the time and go hiking. And he said he remembered there was this one specific area that was restricted to regular park visitors. And they were told by the park rangers, the reason being this was very treacherous, dangerous terrain, and that they didn't want people to go in this area. So him and his friends, they decided that they were going to sneak into this restricted area and see, like, what was there. Now, he said over time, they had been to this national park so many times, they knew basically what the park rangers did and where they were at all times. So they waited until the park rangers were out of the area, and they made their way into this restricted area. Now, he said as they walked around, they expected to find just something really cool. But he said, it was just very plain. It was flat. There wasn't really any treacherous, dangerous terrain. It didn't even make sense as to why this was a restricted area. So he said after about an hour of him and his friends just walking around this area, they decided they'll head back and they'll leave. We said as they were walking, all of a sudden they heard a loud boom. And they hear another boom. And he said that's when they realized someone was firing shots at them. So they began to run. And as they're running through this wilderness area, he said that all of a sudden he feels himself just fall down into this hole. And he said, it must have been 6 foot deep. He started yelling for his friends, help me, help me. So they come back, they're around the hole, and they're trying to get him out. As he's sitting down in this hole, he said he noticed that there was this satchel. And he said he looked in this very old satchel, and in it he finds what looks like some kind of diary, as well as some shotgun casings. So he takes the satchel, his friends get him out of the hole, and they leave this area. He thought it was strange, why were they firing shots at him in this restricted area in the national park? Like, what was going on? He decides he's going to read this journal. So as he starts going through the pages of this journal, he notices this belonged to a younger boy named Elliot Johnson. Elliot Johnson apparently lived in this area in the early 1900s on a homestead. And it goes on to tell his life living on this homestead. So, he reads through several of these, daily write-ins. And halfway through the journal, he said all of a sudden he stumbled upon one interesting page. And it started off with, Father is having his friend Curtis come over tomorrow, and they will be gone for several days on a hunting trip. I wish that I could go with them, but Father says I have to stay with Mother because she is sick. So that ended the journal for the day, right? The next entry is, Father and his friend Curtis. They went off hunting today. I'm here with Mother, and I have so many chores to do. The next journal entry, right, comes 3 days after this. Father is supposed to return today from his hunting trip. I'm so excited to see him. I can't wait for him to get home. Day after this, Father has not made it home. Mother is starting to get worried, but she says everything will be okay. 3 days after this journal, Father has been missing a week now. We do not know where he is. Mother is very worried. I tried to talk to Mother and tell her that I would go looking for Father, but she insists that it is too dangerous. The next day, there's a journal entry, and it said that I have decided that I will go look for Father. I will leave late at night without Mother knowing, and I hope that Father is safe and out there. So this story goes on about Elliot leaving his mother's house in the middle of the night and going out in the woods looking for his father. For several days, he follows his father and Curtis's footprints through the snow. And he said every night he kept hearing these weird sounds of some kind of wolf or animal. And it sounded like it was getting closer. He also noticed that he was finding these very strange footprints that were larger than a bear, that had sort of claw-like protrusions on the end of its foot, and didn't seem like any animal that he had seen in the area. So several days pass, and he still cannot find his father or his friend Curtis. That's when he writes the last journal entry, in which he says that he had stumbled upon this very large cave opening on the side of this cliff. And he says he slowly made his way up the cliff, and as he approached, he could smell the stench of something very rotten. So he said as he slowly peeked into the cave, he could see a very large creature with thick, long fur, these antlers like a deer, but it was standing like a human, and it was eating something. And that's when he realized it was eating flesh off of a bone, and it was throwing the bones off to the side. As he's looking at this creature, he said the next thing he knew, someone put a hand over his mouth, and he was pulled backwards. That's when he discovers it's his dad's friend Curtis, who is badly hurt. Curtis says, "Be quiet. There is some creature that took us into this cave, and this thing is very dangerous. We need to get out of here right away." Elliot can't help but let out a sigh, and he starts panicking. As Curtis is trying to tell Elliot, calm down, let's get out of here. The next thing he knows, Elliot feels a pain on his leg. And that's when he realized this creature is biting his leg. And so Curtis takes his firearm and begins firing at this thing. This alerts the creature's attention to Curtis. Curtis takes off running, and he tells Elliot, "Get out of there, get out of there." As Elliot is hobbling away, he falls into a hole. And as he realizes he's trapped in this 6-foot hole, he's starting to think this creature is going to get Curtis, and it's going to come back for me. So he writes in his diary, "Mom, I love you, and he realizes that this is probably his last entry into the journal. And that ends all of the entries into this man's journal. And that's when he realized why they had made that a restricted area.
This might be the most chilling proof of time travel ever discovered. In 1923, archaeologists in Egypt uncovered a sealed tomb, but inside, they found something impossible, a photograph dated 1987. It showed a man in modern clothing, standing in front of the very same tomb, holding a camera. The man was identified as Elon Huck, a scientist who mysteriously vanished in 1987 while working on a classified government project called Kronos. The project's goal? To unlock the secrets of time travel. But after Huck disappeared, the project was shut down. On the back of the photograph, a chilling message was scrawled, "I tried to stop it, but the loop is inevitable." Then, in 1980, another photograph surfaced. This time, it showed Elon Huck again, but now, he was decades older, standing in front of the same tomb. The date on the photo? 2025. Experts were stunned. How could a man exist in 3 different timelines? And what did he mean by, "the loop is inevitable"? The final clue was found in Huck's 1987 lab notes. Time isn't linear, it's a loop, and I'm trapped in it. But here's the twist. In 2023, a team of researchers reopened the tomb. Inside, they found a camera, the same one from the photographs. When they developed the film, it showed a picture of them standing in the tomb, dated 2045.
So this guy drives a taxi in La Ciudad de Mexico. He says that because he works at nighttime, he does experience a lot of weird things, but what he's about to tell us is the latest thing that has happened to him since. So the night where this thing happened to him, he had just picked up 3 people from a bar. Where they needed to go was a little bit away from the city, but that he still took them, and he remembers clearly because he said that when he dropped them off, he noticed that there was a cemetery next to the house. So he drops those people off at their house and starts driving a little forward, and that's when he saw a man at the gate of the cemetery making the signal for him to stop. And of course, he stops and the guy gets on the taxi. He says that he looked at him through the rearview mirror and asked him where he wanted him to be taken. The guy, smiling from ear to ear, tells him, "Can you take me to La Cantina Pedregal?" And he started driving towards the direction of the bar that he wanted to go to. He says that the guy seemed very happy and excited because he just never stopped smiling from ear to ear. He also noticed that the guy was looking like everywhere, different windows, almost like if he was a tourist that had never been to that place before. He explains that he's not the type of taxi person that will have conversations with his passengers because he considers himself a very introverted person. He says that he also just has trouble starting conversations with like strangers, so he's just not the type to talk. However, he says that he couldn't avoid asking the man like what is making him so happy, why is he so excited? Obviously now he says that he wishes he had never asked the man that question, and that was because his response was, well, it had been a very long time that I haven't left that cemetery. I have been stuck there for years. He said that as soon as he heard that, he felt his heart start beating faster and faster. He got goosebumps and he turned to look at that man again, but this time not with the rearview mirror. He physically turned back to look, and there was nobody in the back seat. He felt like he was about to have a heart attack when he saw nobody back there. He couldn't believe what was happening, so he turned back forward, and the second he looked up at that rear view mirror, the man was back there. He was there, sitting down where he had seen him the first time in the rear view mirror, smiling at him. He turned again, he wasn't there. He turned and looked at the rear view mirror, and he was there. He could only see the man through that rear view mirror. In that moment, he freaked out so much that he hit the brake and accidentally turned the wheel and almost got into a car wreck because of that. He was shaking of fear and somehow still managed to get out of the car and away from the taxi. When he finally looks back and sees the taxi, there was nobody in that car, no one in that back seat. He didn't want to get back in that car, but he had to because he needed to get in there to get his ass back home. It was also 3 in the morning and he was like outside of the car in the street, terrified. He indeed managed to get home without seeing that man again in the back seat through the rearview mirror or without, but he still thinks about it because he's like, did I just give like a dead person a ride, or was it something different? What do you guys think?
Here. Grandpa isn't here right now. Grandpa here. No, he isn't here. He's gone, Molly. What are you looking at? Grandpa. Grandpa, can you hear me? Yeah. Oh my God.
Escucha, hágale, pero hágale suavecito. Espere, espere. Hágale.
A Mexican urban legend. There's this alleyway in Oaxaca called El Callejón del Muerto, which means Dead Man's Alley. It basically got its name from a crime that happened back in colonial times. At night, there were these night watchmen called serenos, and they would be the source of light for people.
Like guide people?
They would patrol the streets, and they would help the community out. Like if you needed the time, if it was an emergency, or if there was a crime that happened, you would tell the sereno so the police could come. So on the night of the crime, there was a final chime from like an old cathedral clock tower, and once the chime ended, all you heard was loud ass scream of a man in pain, followed by a silhouette of a man running to the direction of a temple to get this priest. It said that this man that was running ran in like an abnormally fast way, and he basically told the priest that there was a sereno that was stabbed and he wanted to give his final confession to the priest before he died. So the priest agrees. He follows the guy with the lantern to the alleyway where the guy was stabbed. When they get there, he listens to his confessions, prayers, but the priest couldn't really see his face because of how dark it was. So he calls the guy who brought him there. No response. He looks back and the guy is gone. All you see is the lantern, right? So he picks up the lantern. He goes to the dead body, looks at his face, and the guy that's dead was the same guy
That took him.
So
the guy who got killed, his spirit took this guy to the crime scene of his body.
So he could give his final confession. The crazy thing is, after this whole thing, weird shit started happening to the priest. The ear that he heard the confession, he became deaf in that ear. Ever since then, people say that they see.
This is not real. It's just a dream. Please. Wake up. 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 Wake up.
What the hell are you? Get out of my bed! What the hell no. Wait, it was right there. It was right here. What the?
Who's peeking in here? Help me. Oh my goodness gracious, what the hell? Ain't nobody in the other room. Look at this. Oh my gosh. Oh, my pistol's in the other room. I can't do it. What the hell is that? Oh my gosh. It keeps... Hello? What do you need? I don't even know who you are. This house is haunted. There's something in the other room.
He was recording the fog that's plaguing the U.S. when he sees this on... A man named Scott Ritter was working near dock in Ocean City, Maryland. When he decides to look at the ocean, he begins to notice something strange hiding in the fog.
I'm working this job. I came out on the deck to look at the ocean, and I saw this semicircle of lights that keeps flicking on and off. What the fuck is that?
From above the clouds amidst the dense fog, he captures this strange circular object covered in spotlights. What do you think this could be?